Hello, my little love. Did you have a good day today? I hope something made you smile. Now take a slow breath, relax your shoulders, and let your mind get soft and quiet. It's time for a gentle bedtime story. Long ago, in a land of olive trees and sparkling blue seas, there lived a young prince named Theseus. He had kind eyes and a warm heart, and he loved to help people wherever he went. Theseus lived in a peaceful kingdom where the sun shone golden every morning and the evening stars twinkled like tiny silver lanterns in the sky. One day, Theseus heard a story that made his heart feel heavy. Far across the gentle waves, on a beautiful island called Crete, there stood a great palace made of smooth white stone. The palace belonged to King Minos, who was a thoughtful ruler with a long silver beard. In the center of the palace was something very special and very mysterious. It was called the Labyrinth, a winding maze of soft corridors that curved and twisted like the patterns inside a seashell. Deep in the heart of the labyrinth lived a creature who felt very lonely. This creature was called the Minotaur, and he was different from everyone else. He had the strong body of a man but the gentle head of a bull, with soft brown eyes and curved horns. The Minotaur had lived alone in the labyrinth for so long that he had forgotten how to talk with others. He felt confused and misunderstood, and sometimes his sadness made him seem frightening to people who didn't know him. Every year, young people from faraway lands would come to the labyrinth, hoping to find their way through its winding paths. But the corridors were so twisty and confusing that they would get lost, wandering in circles, unable to find the way out. The Minotaur would hear their footsteps echoing through the halls, but he didn't know how to help them. He would sit quietly in his chamber, feeling sad and wishing he had a friend. When Theseus heard about the lonely Minotaur and the confusing labyrinth, he felt a gentle pull in his heart. He wanted to understand what was happening on that faraway island. Perhaps there was a way to help both the lost travelers and the misunderstood creature. So Theseus made a decision. He would sail across the calm, moonlit sea to Crete and enter the labyrinth himself. His father, the king, felt worried about this journey. He hugged Theseus tightly and said, "Please be careful, my dear son. When you return home safely, change the sails on your ship from black to white, so I will see from far away that you are well." Theseus promised he would remember, and his father kissed his forehead gently. Theseus stepped onto a beautiful wooden ship with painted designs of dolphins and waves along its sides. The sailors raised the dark sails, and the ship glided smoothly across the water. Theseus stood at the front of the boat, feeling the soft sea breeze on his face and watching the seabirds circle overhead. The ocean was so peaceful, with little waves lapping against the hull like a lullaby. As the sun set, the sky turned colors of peach and lavender and soft gold, and Theseus felt calm and ready. After many days of gentle sailing, the ship arrived at Crete. The island rose from the sea like a jewel, covered in green hills and silvery olive groves. White buildings dotted the hillsides, and the palace of King Minos stood proudly at the island's heart, its towers reaching toward the clear blue sky. When Theseus arrived at the palace, he was greeted warmly by the king's daughter, Ariadne. She had dark flowing hair that moved like silk in the breeze and eyes that sparkled with kindness and wisdom. Ariadne had been thinking about the labyrinth for a long time. She knew there must be a way to help the Minotaur feel less lonely and to guide travelers safely through the winding maze. Ariadne and Theseus talked together in the palace gardens, surrounded by fragrant flowers and the soft buzzing of bees. The evening light was golden and warm, and they could hear the gentle sound of fountains splashing in the distance. Ariadne told Theseus about her idea. "The labyrinth is not meant to trap anyone," she said softly. "It was built as a place of wonder, with beautiful patterns and peaceful corridors. But it became confusing because no one could remember the way through." She reached into the pocket of her flowing gown and pulled out a ball of golden thread that shimmered in the sunlight. The thread was strong but soft, woven from the finest silk. "Take this with you," Ariadne said, placing it gently in Theseus's hand. "Tie one end at the entrance, and unwind it as you walk. The thread will remember the path for you, and you can follow it back out again, no matter how far you wander." Theseus smiled and thanked Ariadne. He felt grateful for her wisdom and her kindness. That night, he rested in a comfortable room in the palace, listening to the sound of the sea outside his window and watching the moon paint silver patterns on the walls. He breathed slowly and deeply, feeling peaceful and ready for the journey ahead. When morning came, soft and pink and glowing, Theseus walked to the entrance of the labyrinth. The doorway was tall and carved with beautiful images of waves and stars and spiraling shells. Theseus tied the end of Ariadne's golden thread to a pillar beside the door, making sure it was secure. Then, holding the ball of thread in one hand, he stepped inside. The labyrinth was not dark or scary. Sunlight filtered down through openings in the ceiling high above, creating pools of warm light on the smooth stone floor. The walls were painted with gentle murals of gardens and sky and dancing dolphins. The corridors curved gracefully, turning left and right, opening into small courtyards and then narrowing again into quiet hallways. Theseus walked slowly, letting the golden thread unwind behind him. He could hear his own footsteps echoing softly and the quiet whisper of air moving through the passages. Sometimes he heard the distant sound of water trickling somewhere in the maze, and sometimes he heard the faint cooing of doves roosting in the hidden corners. He walked for what felt like a long time, always moving deeper into the heart of the labyrinth. The golden thread trailed behind him like a glowing path, marking where he had been. Theseus didn't feel afraid. Instead, he felt curious and calm, wondering what he would discover in this mysterious place. At last, the corridor opened into a large, round chamber. The ceiling was domed and painted with stars that seemed to shimmer even in daylight. In the center of the room sat the Minotaur, resting on a soft pile of cushions and blankets. He looked up when Theseus entered, and his large brown eyes were filled with surprise and uncertainty. Theseus stopped and stood very still. He looked at the Minotaur gently, without fear. The Minotaur looked back, his great head tilted slightly to one side. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Theseus spoke in a soft, kind voice. "Hello," he said. "My name is Theseus. I've come from far away because I wanted to meet you. I've heard that you feel lonely here, and I wanted to see if there was something I could do to help." The Minotaur blinked slowly. No one had ever spoken to him with such gentleness before. He tried to answer, but his voice was rusty from not being used. It came out as a low, rumbling sound, but Theseus could hear the sadness in it. Theseus stepped closer, moving slowly so the Minotaur would not feel startled. He sat down on the floor across from the creature, folding his legs beneath him. "It must be hard to be here all alone," Theseus said quietly. "The labyrinth is beautiful, but it's also very quiet. Would you like to tell me about it?" The Minotaur nodded slowly. He looked down at his large hands, then back at Theseus. Gradually, in his own way, he began to communicate. He pointed to the walls and made gentle sounds, and Theseus listened carefully. The Minotaur showed him carvings and paintings that he had looked at every day. Pictures of the sky and the sea that he could only see from far away, through the high openings in the labyrinth walls. Theseus understood. The Minotaur missed the world outside. He missed the feeling of grass under his feet and the smell of flowers and the sight of birds flying free in the open air. He had been misunderstood for so long that he had stopped trying to connect with others, and his loneliness had grown like a heavy shadow. "What if," Theseus said gently, "we found a way for you to leave this place? Not to run away or to cause fear, but to live somewhere peaceful, where you could feel the sunshine and see the stars more clearly at night?" The Minotaur's eyes widened. Hope flickered in them like a tiny candle flame. But then he looked uncertain again, as if he couldn't believe such a thing was possible. Theseus smiled. "I have a golden thread that can lead us out of the labyrinth. And I have a friend named Ariadne who is very wise and very kind. Together, I think we can help you find a better place, somewhere you won't be alone anymore." The Minotaur stood up slowly. He was very tall, and his shadow stretched long across the chamber floor. But Theseus didn't feel afraid. He stood up too and held out his hand. The Minotaur looked at the hand for a moment, then gently placed his own large hand in Theseus's. It was warm and rough, but the touch was soft and careful. Together, they began to walk back through the labyrinth. Theseus followed the golden thread, winding it back up as they went. The Minotaur walked beside him, looking around at the corridors he had known for so long, but this time seeing them differently because he was not alone. As they walked, Theseus told him stories about the world outside, about the markets full of fruit and flowers, about children playing in the streets, about festivals where people danced and sang under strings of lanterns. The Minotaur listened, and with each step, his heavy sadness grew a little lighter. When they finally emerged from the entrance of the labyrinth, the afternoon sun was glowing warm and golden. Ariadne was waiting there, and when she saw them, she smiled. She was not afraid of the Minotaur. Instead, she walked forward and bowed her head respectfully. "Welcome," she said to the Minotaur. "You are safe now, and you are not alone." King Minos came to see what had happened, and when he saw Theseus and the Minotaur standing together peacefully, he understood. The labyrinth had never been meant to be a prison. It had been built as a place of beauty, but it had become a place of isolation. Now that understanding had come, things could change. Ariadne and her father spoke with the Minotaur gently, learning what he needed and what would make him happy. They decided together that he would go to live in a quiet, beautiful valley on the far side of the island. A place with meadows full of wildflowers and a clear stream that sang over smooth stones. There, he could live in peace, and people who understood him could visit and bring him friendship. Before Theseus left Crete, he and the Minotaur stood together on a hillside, looking out at the sea. The Minotaur placed his hand on Theseus's shoulder, a gesture of gratitude and friendship. Theseus smiled and nodded, understanding perfectly. When it was time to sail home, Theseus hugged Ariadne and thanked her for her wisdom and kindness. She gave him a small token to remember her by, a smooth white stone from the beach, warm from the sun. Theseus promised to keep it always. The ship set sail, gliding across the calm water. The sailors were happy, singing gentle songs as they worked. Theseus stood at the front of the ship, feeling the breeze and watching dolphins leap and play in the waves. The journey home was peaceful and beautiful, with the sky changing colors as the sun moved across it, painting the clouds in shades of rose and amber. But Theseus was so full of thoughts about his adventure, about the Minotaur's new home and Ariadne's kindness, that he forgot one important thing. He forgot to change the sails from black to white. Far away, on the cliffs of his homeland, Theseus's father stood watching the horizon every day, waiting for his son's return. When he finally saw the ship approaching with its black sails, his heart filled with sorrow. He believed something had gone wrong, that Theseus had not returned safely. But when the ship reached the shore and Theseus stepped onto the sand, his father saw him and understood that he was well. They ran to each other and embraced, and Theseus explained everything that had happened. His father listened with wonder, learning about the Minotaur's gentle heart and the wisdom of Ariadne and the golden thread that had guided Theseus through the labyrinth. From that day on, the story of Theseus and the Minotaur was told throughout the land, but it was told differently than before. It was not a story of fighting or fear. It was a story about understanding, about seeing past what makes someone different, and about the power of kindness to change everything. The Minotaur lived happily in his valley, tending to the flowers and watching the clouds drift by. Sometimes children would visit him, bringing baskets of fruit, and he would sit with them quietly, listening to their laughter. He was no longer lonely, and he was no longer misunderstood. Theseus returned home and became a wise and gentle leader, always remembering the lesson he had learned in the labyrinth. He kept Ariadne's white stone on a shelf in his room, and whenever he looked at it, he remembered her kindness and the golden thread that had shown him the way. And the labyrinth itself was opened to everyone. People would walk through its beautiful corridors, marveling at the paintings and the way the sunlight fell through the openings above. It became a place of wonder and peace, where people went to think quietly and to remember that even the most confusing paths can be navigated with patience, wisdom, and a thread of hope to guide the way. The stars came out each night over Crete, twinkling softly above the valley where the Minotaur slept peacefully. The sea whispered against the shore, and the wind moved gently through the olive trees. Everything was calm, and everything was well. You did well today, my little love. Now let your eyes grow heavy, and let the night wrap around you like a soft blanket. Sleep well, sweet dreams, and rest deeply.